What if I told you Honda already built one of the most complete real-world adventure bikes, and instead of making it bigger, faster, or more complicated in 2026, they just made it smarter? Wait, because this is where it gets interesting. This is not one of those wild concept machines that may or may not exist. This is something much more dangerous. It's realistic. Welcome back to Acer Rider, and today we're diving into a machine that might quietly dominate real-world riding if Honda plays it right. The 2026 Honda XRE 300 Sahara. And I'll be honest with you right now, this is not the kind of bike that wins spec sheet battles, but it might be the kind of bike that wins everything else. Let's start with something simple. Why does this bike even matter? Because most riders don't live in perfect conditions. They deal with traffic, broken roads, unexpected detours, long commutes, short rides, and sometimes random decisions to just leave the road completely. And that's exactly where the XRE 300 Sahara lives, right in the middle of real life. Now let's talk design, but not in a boring way. Because this bike doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't try to look like a Dakar rally monster, but at the same time, it carries that quiet confidence. Tall stance, slim profile, rally-inspired front, functional bodywork. It looks like a bike that's ready to go anywhere, but doesn't need to prove it. And I'll be honest, I actually prefer this over aggressive, over-designed adventure bikes. Because when a bike looks simple, you don't hesitate to ride it. And that changes everything. Now let's get into the engine, because this is where people often underestimate this bike. Underneath, you're getting a 300 cubic centimeters class single-cylinder engine. Not massive, not intimidating, but here's the key. It's tuned for real riding. Not racing, not showing off, just usable, predictable power. And I want to say something here based on my personal experience mindset. The best engines are not the ones that feel exciting for 5 minutes. They're the ones that feel right for 5 hours. And that's exactly what this engine delivers. You twist the throttle, it responds smoothly. You ride in traffic, it doesn't overheat your brain. You go on a highway, it holds steady without stress. And when the road disappears, it doesn't panic. Now let's talk performance. And this is where things get really interesting. Because this bike is not trying to be the best at one thing. It's trying to be good at everything. City riding? Easy. Highway cruising? Comfortable. Rough roads? No problem. Light off-road? It actually enjoys it. And that balance? That's incredibly hard to achieve. Because most bikes choose a side. This one doesn't. Now here's where I get a bit personal. Because this is exactly the type of bike I respect the most. Not the fastest, not the most powerful, but the one that never gives you a reason to stay home. And that's something a lot of people don't think about. Because the best bike isn't the one that impresses you. It's the one you actually ride the most. Let's talk suspension, because this is where the Sahara 300 starts proving it's not just a city machine. Long travel front forks, rear monoshock, high ground clearance. This means you're not constantly worrying about the road. You see a bad patch, you go through it. You see a dirt path, you take it. You don't stop and think, can my bike handle this? Because you already know the answer. Now imagine this for a second. You're riding home after a long day. Traffic is bad. Roads are broken. You're tired. On most bikes, that ride feels like a task. But on something like the XRE 300 Sahara, it just feels normal. And that's powerful. Now let's talk features, but let's keep it real. This is not a tech-heavy machine. And honestly, that's a good thing. You get what you need. LED lights, digital display, ABS for safety, USB charging. And that's it. No complicated menus, no confusing electronics, no unnecessary distractions. And I'll say this clearly, that simplicity is not a weakness. it's a strength. Now let's talk about comfort, because this is where a lot of bikes fail. The Sahara 300 sits tall, but not in an uncomfortable way. It gives you that commanding view of the road, but still keeps things manageable. The seat, designed for actual riding, not just short trips. The ergonomics, upright, relaxed, natural. And here's my personal take again. Comfort is not just about seats and suspension. It's about how a bike makes you feel after riding it for hours. And this is exactly where this bike wins. Now let's talk about who this bike is actually for. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because the answer is almost everyone. Beginner? Yes. Intermediate rider? Definitely. Experienced rider? Surprisingly, yes. Because this bike doesn't limit you. It adapts to you. And that's rare. Now here's something most people won't say. A lot of riders buy powerful bikes and then don't use their full potential. But a bike like this, you use everything it has. Every ride feels complete. Nothing is wasted. And honestly, that's a better experience. Now let's talk about the 2026 angle. Because here's the truth. Honda doesn't need to completely redesign this bike. They just need to refine it. Smoother engine response, slightly improved suspension tuning, better fuel efficiency, maybe a cleaner display. That's it. Because the foundation is already strong. Now here's the twist I mentioned at the beginning. What if the 2026 Honda XRE 300 Sahara doesn't try to compete with big adventure bikes, doesn't try to chase performance numbers, doesn't try to impress anyone, but ends up becoming the bike people ride the most? Because, think about it, it's not extreme, it's not complicated, it's not intimidating, but it fits into your life perfectly. And in the real world, that's what matters. So let me ask you something. If you had to choose one bike, one machine that you could ride every single day without thinking twice, would you go for something bigger, more powerful, more complex, or something like this? Simple, capable, always ready. Because I'll be honest, the more I think about it, the more I realize this is exactly the kind of bike I'd want in my garage. Not for showing off, not for racing, but for riding. If you enjoyed this, hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Acer Rider. Because here, we don't just talk about motorcycles, we talk about what actually makes them worth riding. And quick disclaimer, while the Honda XRE 300 Sahara is a real model in certain markets, the 2026 version discussed here includes forward-looking updates and AI-assisted interpretation based on current specs, trends, and rider expectations. Because sometimes, the best bike isn't the one that changes everything. It's the one that quietly gets everything right.